See, we don't need Johnny. He doesn't invite us to his stupid little barbecue. We can do it ourselves. Um, you guys are listening to Yag. You're probably confused why I didn't start with a typical "Hey, dude" and started blasting my co-host for not inviting me to his Freedom Fest. I'm not bitter, but I decided we're going to do something that I've always wanted to do. It's going to be a multi-part series. Don't count on a regular release date because I've wanted to do this for 3 years and we're just finally getting to it. But this is going to be Rev's penny pinching, do things as cheap as possible, grow for all you cheapskates out there like me.
That's a solid title.
I am just going to throw questions out. We're going to answer honestly. I brought in my dear friend Howling because not only is he one of my favorite growers, but I think he is well known for his Howling Tech. I think it offers a good hindsight. And then I brought in Stoney, my dear friend, who I just like the way he grows and talks. And I'm pretty sure he knows how to budget too because he's a man in America. So, welcome, my friends.
Hey, good to see you. You got the brilliance up there in the corner, so we'll start picking his brains.
Yes, Howling is going to be fun. But the first subject I wanted to talk about was lights, but we're not going to do that because now is not the time. We're going to talk even earlier than that before I throw a main question to you. But I want to talk about soil, particularly because of selfish reasons. So we'll start with the selfish stuff I want to talk about, and then we can get to the other stuff later that I'll tune out for. Just kidding. So I was recently thinking about getting EcoWits, the soil gauge sensor thing. You and Johnny have them, Howling. But after a conversation with you, I decided not to, and that's kind of what spurned part of this whole thing from finally getting started. But when we talked about it, it ended with me not pulling the trigger. But let's start with what you use them for and what they're used for in general.
I mean, they're for idiots like me that don't have the intuition of knowing how moist is moist. And like when I first started growing, I went a couple rounds without the EcoWits. And I mean, when you like, people have different ways, and they're like, go a knuckle deep, see what it feels like, or just reach down a little bit more, and it's supposed to feel like a moist sponge. And I'm just not really great at feeling those things. And I was always getting it wrong, or I'll get it perfect, but then I didn't know when the next time was unless I had to keep on doing this. And it was just a pain in the ass. So then that's when, let's see, what was I? I think I was on the Build a Soil Discord, and me and another dude started talking about the EcoWits. This is before Jeremy started using them or had them or anything. This was like a very new to the home grower scene. And I was like, fuck, maybe this is the way for me. And I learned a lot. They're not like, I think for the most part you can just start using them, but if you really want to dial in your watering, you start learning how the soil behaves and where best to use those data points. And for me, the biggest value I get is one, knowing my soil is set up to the best of my ability before I even plant a seed. So like we all like to moisten our soil, get it all homogeneous, and make sure it's at the right moisture, especially with like autos before we plant a seed into the soil. And this was just a stupid, easy way.
See, I think that's a major plus. It gives you the peace of mind and, like you said, a baseline to compare future things. And I think in a recent comparison you did between Build a Soil and Kiss Organics, I think they came in hand. Like that might be the perfect use case.
I would have gotten myself into trouble if I kept it up. So this is where it helped me really quickly identify that not all soils are the same way. So the readings from them are not going to be the same. And that's why I encourage people, like, use them for yourself relative to your own medium and your own watering practices. Don't compare them to what someone else is doing. Don't compare them across different kinds of soils. People do it, and I know like Jeremy has shared some percentage numbers, and some people throw those out, and they're like general guidelines. But overall, you're just comparing it to what your environment's like and what you use. And yeah, I noticed between Kiss and Build a Soil, quite a bit of difference with the using the EcoWets, and I use two different ones now because the beds are like 18 inches high. So I have the lower sensor that can be buried, and then I have the top sensor, which is just a 4-inch blade that's on it. And for like normal pots, the top is fine, but like when you're doing sips and they get that kind of tall with that much soil, I found it good to use both of them. And what I noticed is like it took much less time to heavily saturate the soil. I never measured like how much water was being uptaken between the two different soils, but I noticed like the moment I turned the bottom watering on, the KISS soil just shot up in moisture super quick, top to bottom. And so it was hard. If I didn't know that, I wouldn't know like, hey, I need to pulse the res a little bit on this thing. I definitely would not. I mean, personally, I definitely wouldn't use it in something like an earth box where I don't have control for those first couple gallons. It just sucks it up. I don't think I would use KISS organic soil in it, just because.
Yeah,
I learned it's really the organic matter, and I already knew this. Like when I top dress, you can even notice when you use the EcoWits just with from the top and you top dress, every top dressing is going to mess with what your perception of those numbers mean. They start changing on you because, I mean, you got to think like you're adding like worm castings or build a flower or something that doesn't have any aeration in it. Right. It has a lot of organic matter, and organic matter loves to get very wet.
Yes.
And so like it changes. And I think that's really what the KISS organic soils, they use a lot more compost and castings in it than Build the Soil from what I've seen. And I think that's just really what it is. And they use a little less pumice. I did notice that this last round, I emptied out the KISS Organics bed and I added more pumice just because I just needed, and biochar. So I think that just all contributes to it just really sucking up water, and it holds on to it for a while. Like there was a while where I had an auto in there and I turned off the res and went days, and it was in flower, and it went days without even having to touch the moisture. It just retains it so well. So the EcoWets helped me with that. I wouldn't have known.
I was going to say that's a major plus, because those numbers you would have had to discover from why is this plant suddenly dying? You know, it's
And I noticed issues with the plant. I mean, that after the fact, like after I started, I caught it late because I got in the habit of like I only checked the moisture maybe once a week or twice a week once I turned the res on. And so I did leave it for quite a few days, and it shot up to 75%, which if you've watched any of the Build a Soil series, it's like 35 to 55, depending on the system. This was just super wet, and I pulled away the mulch and I looked at the soil. I'm like, holy crap. It's like I just watered this thing, but I didn't. And I noticed issues. It started having issues.
Well, I do in this instance applaud you for having them, because you saved. I was also following behind you, so I would have made the switch and just dumped them in the earth boxes and cursed your name as my growing suffered.
And maybe it's a good point or maybe it's a good time to like take a step back and just in baseline foundation as we're talking about moisture in soil and what that impact is, right? So especially when we're talking about soils of the organic nature, there's a lot of life going on. And there's a lot of communication going on in that life, whether it's through the mycorrhizal. There's a lot of stuff going on in the root system. There's and if you think about it, the water helps the conductivity of things. So it's where we get that EC from, right? So it's able to communicate, it's able to maneuver around and send out its exudates and take the information back in and feed its roots. And so that's why it's really good to have that consistent moisture content level. Remember, when, especially in organics, as we dry down, it will then, all that bacteria that's alive in there will start to go, I always forget this, hydrophobic, where it repels the water.
Yes.
Hydrophobic, right? So it basically creates a capsule around it so that it dries out and preserves itself. So that's why if you let your pot go too dry, even if it's in your houseplants or whatever, and you pour water over the top of it, it just kind of sits there and it takes a while before it breaks that. It's just because it's gone dormant. So that bacteria is now moving and helping the information communicate back and forth. So to take us back to circle us back to where we started from with this of, feeling that moisture content of sticking a knuckle deep into it. That's one. And knuckle deep into it, beginning to understand like the term moisture. I always was kind of went under this. It should feel like a moist cake. So like if you're in the Midwest and you've had Portillo's, I always use my mind frame as their chocolate cake is my point of, but for some people that may be much more moisture than is needed. I typically just use sips, so it maintains its own water. And I think there is a theory that the flower kind of takes as what it needs from the moisture content of that. But to take us to circle us back, number two, to where you were saying from that material, the more organic material you have in there, the more it sponges, the more it holds, the more it absorbs up, and will just sit on that water. Too much moisture in there will start to create different bacterias, will start to feed different things that aren't necessarily good in your soil. And that's where dry backs do really well in sub-irrigated systems just as well. A lot of folks are just like, let's just keep it running, keep the moisture in there. And it does work. But to your point, Howler, I think you will see some struggles on the tail end of your grow with the nutrient cycling. And maybe you can touch a little bit more on what you've seen.
Well, I mean, that's just, I mean, like you said, it's the electrical conductivity, but it goes back to what is it? It's CEC, which is the cation exchange capacity.
Right.
Like, so you have organic soil, so it has a high capacity to hold on to nutrients. It's because it's negative. A lot of the material is negatively charged. So it holds on to things like calcium, I think potassium or phosphorus. One of them does and one of them doesn't. And micronutrients and stuff, and they attach to these things. This is why, like, when you like try to flush soil or it's rainy outside, it doesn't wash away those. It will, like, that's where, like, it rains a lot or you irrigate a lot of nitrogen or nitrates, not nitrites or nitrates. One of them flows away. This is like a huge problem. But that's, if you overwater, what ends up happening is it's, instead of the plant doing exudates to have bacteria and stuff do their magic to exchange those cations from the exchange site to make them be able to, and then process them and make them be able uptaken by the plant, water is going to at some point infect those and take those nutrients and wash them away or push them down lower in the soil, and make them not available. They're just not nearly as close to the plant roots as they were, or it affects that exchanging. And that's what I saw in this plant, especially with calcium. I started seeing calcium problems, even though it was a fresh soil and I amended with some things. I know there was plenty of calcium in there to start. It started showing calcium issues, and it was purely, I think, because of that water. I mean, I corrected it. I got once I knew what was going on, I could fix the issue, do a bit of a dry back, and then control watering from then out. And luckily, try understanding why that started happening and having like a hypothesis it was from the irrigation. I was able to dial back what I was doing to the point where I didn't have to overcorrect. Like some people would be like, stick CalMag in there. It's not going to fucking do anything.
Because it's going to take a while for it to cycle through unless you find something that's super available. And even then, that's usually packed on diatomaceous earth that's going to throw the whole moisture cycle.
And this is where
we chase tails in.
And this is where like lockout comes from, because, or not lockout, but availability, because as you're feeding CalMag or something or some calcium source, there's going to possibly be exchange sites opened up now because you've washed away some of those calcium or whatever else, and then they're going to bind to that and prevent other nutrients that's deficient from binding. And so now you got this problem like where things are just getting washed lower into the soil and away from the root zone. And now you're starting to chase a bunch of deficiencies.
It's a problem too when you get people in salts and stuff too, when they water from the top, when all of a sudden they were always watering from the bottom, or vice versa. They just send salts and all that shit's different directions.
Well, yeah, that comes. I mean, that and like it's rough watching people go from like an organic way of thinking and then they go to salts and using something like cocoa that does not. It saturates the medium. It's like a sponge. It's just there in the solution. It's not on these exchange sites or anything. So like if you water just a little bit, it'll sit and you kind of try to like get it totally saturated. It sits around the roots, but then if you saturate too much, it starts coming out, and it's not all in there. And like I don't know how they deal with that,
Neither,
because
man.
just the
It's
little bit
impressive
with
stuff.
organics that we have to worry about this, they have to worry about that a hell of a lot more, because nothing's holding on to it. It's just in suspension in the medium when it's inert.
You're maximizing the drybacks over an hourly basis rather than a daily basis, like what you often find in organic. So a whole nother beast in its own right. But to take you back on that cocoa, like it is just kind of a neutral sponge. And, I think it's pretty clear you and I and almost everyone in YAG grows in organic material. You can still add synganics on top of it and other amendments into it, but as a core base medium, all of our soil is quote unquote living soil, right? It's all alive. There's stuff in there. There's critters, there's creatures, there's things micro, there's broken down, there's castings, there's worms, there's canals, there's all sorts of things going on in our soils. So two different beasts in its own right. And to your point with these meters giving you sort of data points, like, what is it Johnny always says, and see, he's here. So in one way or form or another.
He's dead to us. Don't bring that name up.
What does he say?
Again, not bitter.
The best fertilizer is a farmer's shadow. Isn't that what he always says,
Yeah.
right? He's said it for years and years now. I think that's the key, is like, it's just another data point, whether it's sticking your finger into the soil knuckle deep, whether you're using some of the other ones. You can go straight to your big box store and get some sort of a moisture meter and stick it down in there. There's going to be recommendations, but every soil is going to be a little bit different. And I think that's sort of like the key to kind of starting on the penny pinching, is like knowing where the investment is and safety and insurance in it. And to me, it's always been in that sort of organic space. Especially when I looked at the very beginnings of what it was like to get into the game and to look at what I would need to keep running the system. It just didn't necessarily seem cost effective, and the risk of failure at a rapid rate, as in, one bad solution mix, one pump not working for a day or two while I was gone and out of town, could cost an entire crop. Just wasn't worth the time and effort and the difficulty, I think, in the true challenge in growing in like pure cocoa. So, I mean, my hat's off to the skill that it takes to home grow in it. To me, that's where I was like, okay, one of my big major investments. And, when I sat and looked at the overall beginning to get in, it really was around the soil. And I think that's one of your big major investments to do, because, you do that, it's your insurance package. It's all in there. It's that buffet that I always talk about before. It's all there. You buy good soil. So whether it's leaning into trusted minds that have tested and done all the R&D, like this guy up there,
Well, I think what's important to consider is individual use cases, right? Like it is super, super important that Howling had the knowledge personally, right? It didn't affect his grow, in my opinion, that much, because he's a great grower, but it gave him peace of mind, so he didn't have to worry about it. And that, for a lot of people, is more than enough. But the reason,
data driven.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. But the reason that I was considering it was because I also thought it was cool knowledge. But Howling was like, well, you don't have a problem. Like, you're not necessarily solving a problem.
Well, I think you, at least correct me if I'm wrong, I think mostly lately, a lot of your boxes are running Build a Soil in them. Yes. Reused over some cycles. So, I mean, of course, through each cycle, the organic matter is changing, but you're also adding it back in. So I'm going to consider it almost a wash. So it's probably behaving as if it was from a fresh bag of soil in earth boxes. We kind of know the behavior of that pretty well. I mean, I think we've had enough people do it that you kind of know that you're okay. You don't have to measure that. And really, I mean, there's just two reasons why I would say introduce them. As one is, if you're going to start mixing your own soil, you keep the same containers, but you're going to use your own soil. That's going to help you gauge what your watering practices should be like, because maybe you're used to saturating when you plant the seed, but you don't sit there and water again until week 4, and you might notice in the new batch of soil, it's maybe week 3 that you have to start doing that, and it'll kind of help you gauge those things.
Brilliant.
But also, it's really helpful through those. For me, it's really those first 4 weeks when it's a tiny little baby and we all over water, and it's a fine line to walk, and some people just have the intuition and luck to do it. And for me, data was the best way that I knew that if I kept the top, I mean, really, I care about like the first 4 or 5 inches of the soil for a new seedling, and that's really what the EcoWood is measuring. And as long as I keep that in the range that everyone else is having great success with, I know I'm pretty good. And so it just goes back to using data to baby these things, and I probably baby them a little more than I should, but it helps.
No, I in a almost shocking turn, I generally will make a ruling and say it's unnecessary, or don't, like I would preach it's stupid, don't do it, or whatever. But I think the examples that you brought shine as to why it's an excellent example of why, if you're doing something like that, like if you truly want to make your own soil, there is zero user data out there on what is in your soil currently. Why not do yourself a favor? How much are they for a basic system?
I think they start, the first cost is going to be about $50, and that's for a sensor in the weather station that it has to pair with, and then you can just spend $20 per sensor after that, depending on how many pots you have.
So if you want to dial in your soil that you're making and you're trying to close the loop, I think for $50 to get the reassurance that you can run it in a pre-existing system, like I do, I think that I would come down and say that's a pretty cool thing to do.
And you know what? I think another perspective to look at it is a $50 investment into the rest of your grows if you stick with a piece of equipment, right? So if you stick with earth boxes, if you stick with what it is, and you learn it in that first round, like even if you just use it for the one round, and you feel confident that, okay, now I know that this system, if I water it this amount, stays this way, do it a second round to double check yourself and test it, and then your $50 cost you $25 per round for you to have confidence in your investment. And that's insurance.
It would be
right.
It'd be really cool to use outdoor too if you were like struggling for uses, right? If you got it and kept it on, because then you can check out new beds, how new plants. I can see the uses, so I come down on
because it's not fixed, right? It's not fixed into one pot. You can move it to any bed of soil, right? I mean, it's just a sensor is a sensor is a sensor.
Well, I move them around. Like it depends. Like there's some that get a permanent sensor in there, and there's some where I've just like especially the smaller pots, I'll move them around depending on which one is. I behave drinking differently or behaving differently. I'll move them around and rename them, and that's it. That's where they're at. And I'll bring up. I'm actually looking at it right now. I'll bring up another use case here. So I'm on my third run in these beds in my 4x4, and they've had a lot of organic matter on the top added. And not necessarily, especially if you follow like the build the soil way, there's not a lot of mixing it back in. It's just your lasagna and adding layers with no aeration in that. So at some point, everything compacts down and the new organic matter's up top with no aeration. I'm looking at my meters now because I was gone for a week and a half, and my res ran dry, so I could start seeing the numbers slowly go down, which is another thing that's helpful. It gives me an idea of, I got to go. Instead of me checking, I just look at my phone and be like, I got to fill the res. It's kind of empty now. But I'm looking at these. So these beds, I have the lower and the upper sensors, and the low sensors are reading low. Lower than I would. They're starting to approach. They're like 41% and 47%. So that's starting to go down a little lower than I would like to keep the steady state. In the beds, I like 55. Okay. But my tops, 64 and 62. So there's a huge difference. So like all these people, like you'll see some of these reels and stuff like, gravity pulls water down. And I got the data. Yes, maybe to
not if it's stuck in a sponge.
It's stuck. It's a sponge. You're not sucking. Gravity's not sucking it from the sponge.
Free water.
Take a wet sponge and hold it up. It's not gonna like just all of a sudden gravity's gonna pull it out of there. It's holding on to it.
Yeah. Well, so they're talking about the osmotic pressure, right? But that only operates at a certain amount.
It's definitely. I mean, I'm having 20% differences between, and I mean, there's only maybe probably where the end of the blade of the EcoWood is and the sensor I planted. There may be 7 inches space difference between that. And I'm reading a 20% difference because what I'm trying to also gauge, it's week 5. Week 5, I do this special little concoction top dress, and then I'll water in some goodies. Like I've been big into the last 2 runs into a few different inputs on the top. even the top water. And I'm watching this and I'm like, fuck, I'm going to water the top. It's already saturated, but the bottom's not. So actually, like right now, what I've done is, and this is going to be a little neurotic for some people, but I'll hand fill the trays. So that way, like I just kind of, it's as a slow bump up. So I'll do a half
So
gallon
you
per
can nurse
tray,
it up.
and I can nurse it the bottom up while the top is slowly coming down. And then at some point, then I'll be able to top water all through.
That's really smart.
So this is where this is coming in handy, but I don't recommend this like level of neuroticism for everyone.
No,
but for me, it works.
I have two questions before I get to what I really want to talk about, which is going to be the reason I brought you both on, and I'll let you go into it. But my first question, have you given any thought, like, are you going to do anything to try and address the aeration problem in top dresses?
Yeah, well, right now, I've been thinking of a couple things. Right now, I'm probably not going to overcorrect anything. I think day 35 or 36 of flower. I probably have another 30 days to go. Anything I'm not going to fuck with it. I don't know what's all established in that. I'm not going to screw with it. I am going to still top dress one time. I'm debating what I'll do with that top dress. Maybe add a little bit of rice hulls to it, a little bit, maybe mix it a little better in with like the straw mulch on top, just to kind of break it up a little bit. I don't know, or maybe I'll just straight top dress, and that's what it is this round. Next round, I'm gonna do my soil test again, and I'm gonna mix it all up. Okay. I'll take it all out, I'll mix it up, and maybe that's just my standard way for the next.
You can always just top it. I mean, I looked at my root structures of my autopots when I took this last round out of the XL, and my root structures did not go as deep as they normally do.
I haven't had that problem. My roots are all like in these beds. I've torn out the 2x4 twice now, the bed, and it's all through that damn bed. I just
wondered if you could like take the top, 6 inches off.
So I did that.
Aerate that and replace it if it's worthwhile.
I haven't added aeration, but I did a soil test this last round on these beds, and I did take the first like 6 inches, and the stuff they told me to add, I followed Ted Hussey's recommendation from Kiss Organics, which is like the first 6 inches. It's not really considered full tilling like we would in an agricultural sense, right, big ag. Right. But I did take it and I mixed it in because you really want to supply it for like the first 6 inches of where you're going to put that plant, and then the roots can get whatever. Yep. I did do that, so that's why I'm a little surprised about seeing this. And this is the first of the last 3 runs I've seen this stratification like this. So I don't know. I just don't know, and I don't know if it's like. Yeah, I'm just not sure what's going on. I may have been a little heavy with organic matter too these last couple times.
Yep.
So I'll figure out this is not terrible. Like this is completely fixable. I can work with this. I could do nothing right now and it probably still would be fine. So I'm not in a danger zone, but it's good to know because I plan on reusing the soil a lot more times. So it's just it's good to know that I'm trending in this direction and just micro adjustments. And I'm not going to do anything major to that soil. I'm not going to start getting crazy and add like 10 pounds of pumice to each bed or anything, but we'll see. Wonderful. But it's interesting seeing it.
I love it. I think it's all great data, and I think that further kind of just says that if it's a good tool to have, if it's something that interests you.
But this is absolutely like if we talk about like how someone can get into this cheaply and get started.
No, this is the antithesis.
This is not what you do. This is what I do.
Well, let's take it. Yeah, I mean, so this goes back to where I was saying, like when I started then. So we'll circle back to like investing into your soil, where you instead of trying to, from my personal opinion, I think. Instead of trying to mix up your own batch of soil and buying all the ingredients and combining them and trying to find that recipe, to take a trusted that's within the cannabis industry, within our community, or with whomever, you get good advice from your grow shop, and start with a really well-balanced cannabis centered soil. And there are plenty of them out there, and start with that, and then add some amendments along the way from it. But once you start getting to the advanced levels of organics and layering and top dressing and that sort of thing, but starting out and kind of getting into the game, I think it's a really good investment to drop, and plan on dropping 35, $40 into a bag of soil. It's an investment.
I couldn't agree more. However, you are jumping ahead, my dear friend.
Shit.
And that will be its own discussion, because at first we are going to do broad strokes. And as we dive in further, unfortunately for anyone listening, we in the future episodes will only dive in further to the topics that we actually understand. So I won't be able to give you any detail on, cocoa and anything like that, or hydroponics, but we will bring in guests to discuss it if everything works out. But I want to start broadly, and I will pose the question to you again that I posed this morning, with absolutely zero time for you guys to properly do this. The question I asked: you're starting from scratch. What is the bare minimum you'd be prepared to take a photo and an auto to, I said flower with, but we both mean completion. It can be the same answer or perhaps two answers. Also, try to throw a rough cash value on what you think. Who would like to go first? Stoney, my dear friend, take it away.
I got notes, man. I had notes. I went down a rabbit hole quickly because I think it's a fair assumption, and I'll just kind of set the stage with, I saw just the other day, I was online and just kind of poking around and seeing how many of these starter kits and entry level, and we talk about costs, and it can be really intimidating for costs. So I actually wanted to see what I could do with way less and just begin to kind of get into the game. So first of all, I want to make some assumptions around this one, right? Because this is kind of the mindset. And I have two, right? And so I'll do the first one. So the first one, the assumption underneath it is just for autos, and that you just want to enjoy and have a connection with the flower. It's a simple one, dude. I think that it's a pot on your countertop in bright sunlight and watching the thing grow. It's really that fun and simple. You can still smoke it. It's a way to grow it. But if you were trying to get into the larger game of auto or photo, some of the assumptions that I started to kind of dig around with is that you probably need some sort of an existing room, whether it's in your basement or somewhere that's pretty well ventilated, preferably a basement where it can get cool at night, preferably somewhere with no windows so there's no natural light, especially if we're going to get into the photo game. A certain level of aromatics to come during seasonal times, because we're going to go budget and DIY on this one. And nothing that gets ventilated to the outdoors where you're going to have to control temperature based on what's outside. So again, like a good basement grow. But for this one, I really started to think about what would be the bare minimum to get started. And, tents are one area that everyone jumps into. I think that there's other options into it. I think the medium was something that was important to me that we've already kind of started to talk about. Lights is the other main component to it. And as a part of that soil, kind of the amendments that might go along with it, that can just keep good baseline and also potentially give you a little bit more for balance out of what you might not be able to afford within the light. And then some basic rudimentary HVAC. All squared away on this one. I think I got us at under about $500. And this is just kind of scratching on Amazon, and this is just to get the equipment in your door.
Damn, that's not bad.
So let's start with the tent, because I think that that's one area that everyone jumps into, starts looking around for. It's a difficult environment to begin to learn how to balance. So this will take me back to not a tent, but back into a room that's well ventilated and all those assumptions that I'd said earlier. Take the base functioning of what a tent does. It controls the environment, makes it a small micro environment, but it also reflects light. And so everyone's like, okay, well, I have to have a tent. I have to have a tent. And we love those little shiny Mylar walls for our stickers and all of the decals and everything that we can put onto them. But the function of them is to reflect that light all around the plant so that it gets more energy and grows even more. So I was like, how do we solve this one? So I went poking around. You can get a 6-pack of that high silver Mylar, those emergency blankets, that they also list for grow, right? There's the chuckler, right?
I did this in my second run.
Yeah, see, there's our Howler Tech, dude.
I took a four shelf stand, and I took all the shelves off except for the bottom, and I could hang a light from it. I put a
Right.
moto at the bottom, and I put the emergency blankets around
Right,
it.
Dude,
it's just
as
reflection and
as
it holds
someone who
temperature.
looked into those space buckets and those space tubs, dude, those Mylar things, yeah, I'm telling you, people have put together some cool ass rooms with them, and they
Dude,
work.
there were 6-pack of 83-inch by 52-inch for $9. A 6-pack. So I mean, and it's emergency blankets, so they're really cheap and easy to get this stuff in Mylar. You can get like Panda film, but that's even more
I've seen
expensive.
Panda film.
Yeah. All of these do just the component of reflecting some light around in the room and help kind of keep a little barrier going. But also, like Mylar will reflect a little bit of heat and warmth too. So if you've got a cooler space and you want to get those temperatures up, you'll be able to retain some of that light bounce around warmth. So that to me was, the next step into it was kind of the lighting, which that's the big one. So let me go to the next easy one. I think the easiest one for HVAC, and again, this is based on the assumptions that you've got central air conditioning, heating, so that you can at least manage the massive room that's around it. But I think you can really get away with like a 12 or 16-inch wall mounted fan or even a floor mounted fan that oscillates. It's 40, $50 or for a general cost for it. You can get I have the Hurricane wall mounted one that I think I got for like $40 that I've had running nonstop for 3 years now, nonstop. Um, so and those are solid investments that are just helping to kind of move air around. But I think that's, if you start looking at your environment first and temperatures and controlling some of those variables, the next round is that soil. And we got going on the soil with that. And for someone just really kind of getting into the game, I think that there are just some baseline amendments that can be start learning the process of top dressing and give basic fundamental ingredients that are simple to measure out and not feel too complicated and scratch right in or water in, however you want to do it. Cold War Organics has always been something that I've used, and I think it's a good entry level to recommend for folks because it's just a scoop that you can scratch in. You can step it up with their Angel's Touch that'll help give some of the humic acid and some of the other helpful micronutrients into it. And then I think a bacteria regimen with Photo Plus is huge. I think within there you've got a really diverse little culture that's going to bring lots of life to an organic soil that I think is worth that investment of the soil. And I'm figuring about $80 worth of soil for everything that I just kept looking into. And no matter how I get back to it, the Earth Box is just the most economical, most efficient way that I can seem to find for an entry level grower that's just really stepping into the game and needs to just water soil.
Excellent. I can attest to Cold War Organics. I have also used it to great success. I still have a bunch that I'll throw in out my outdoor occasionally.
Yeah.
They discontinued their flower stuff though, unfortunately. I saw Captain was very upset. I think he found a replacement though.
Yeah.
Did you see what that was, Howling?
Oh, I think he's talking about Organics Alive.
That's okay. That's what I saw. But I think you're on the right path, Stoney. I love it. I think even if you wanted to make your own Earth Box, I think you could do that.
They're running for $60 right now.
Yeah, you could
for
make
the big one.
Let's see. I made my 9-gallon one for I think $9.99.
Right, there you go.
Granted, I have a lot of tools available, and
and
all I needed was a hot knife and a drill. I think
some of it is that you're investing in confidence and comfort.
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
I gotcha.
If I'm talking a first time grower getting into the game,
absolutely. I said, I don't think there's any wrong answers. I think the philosophy is right on. I'm excited for our soil talk when we have it, and our light talk, because that'll be fun to go into more detail. The Mylar I love. I hope someone posts some pictures of some stuff they've done with Mylar.
You can even paint high reflective light paint, you know.
I've seen the paint. I've always wanted to do, like, Grateful's done the full room. I've always wanted to have like a full basement. But one of the biggest issues currently for me would be the overwhelming smell. I think would be pretty evident.
Yep. Again, the assumptions are you're comfortable with that.
Which most people, and we all should be, right? The world shouldn't care, but unfortunately some of us have restrictions.
The world does.
But I think that's solid, and I hope someone listening gets their mind going that way. Howling, I pose the same question to you.
Well, I think my solution, I mean, there is assumptions as well, but my solution, the beginner, the bare bone closet grower, $160. And so,
that
and
was
this
a weird noise I made.
What?
I said that was a weird noise I made. Sorry. I went.
I love it.
So I think so. There's a few assumptions. There is the fact that you can forego a grow tent right now. A grow tent's a little bit of an investment, especially if you don't even know if you're going to continue growing. They're not cheap. I mean, you could cheap out, but I would consider don't cheap out just to have it replaced by a better tent later. Wait for the better tent,
especially if you get a short tent.
I have a few cheap ones, and my God, they're a pain in the ass. Don't do it. Just wait until you know you absolutely are going to continue and you want that. I mean, if you know you're going to repurpose it, even if you don't grow cannabis, fine. But this is like just getting, if some person approached me and just said, how can I even get started? I'll say under $200, do this. And it's for soil. Again, this is assumed. So like any of us that started growing, I bet we've all changed up soil and feed and methods and all sorts of things over the first few grows. So I'm not overly focused on long-term sustainability of what you pick. So I'm going to go with get yourself a big bag of Happy Frog. Not the greatest soil, but a lot of people get shit done with it. And it's not high in nutrients like Ocean Force. So this is a good starting point. And I'm going to focus on autos for a reason. You can cheap out on light. And because you can run that auto at 20 hours, so you don't need as much light intensity going on. So that means that your options for lights are a little different. And I also I would not suggest overly investing in a light to start with. That's the big investment. That's the big cost. So anyways, going back to the soil. So Happy Frog is just the medium. And I would buy the Organics Alive sample kit. It's $25. It's all carbon chelated, dry nutrient, water soluble. Comes with like a couple of little bag of worm castings, some other organic inputs. I think there's like an FPJ in there as well. It's not just the NPK nutrients that they have. It's a few things. And they claim that you can run 2 plants in 5-gallon pots or smaller with that sample kit. So I just get one sample kit, 1 7-gallon fabric bag, a bag of Happy Frog, and that's it. Like that'll get you really good because it's organic, alive inputs with a high carbon source. So that's perfect. And then for light, you can get the Viper Spectra XS 1500 for about $80 to $90. It'll give you more light than you need for photo or auto, but we're going to focus on auto right now. And you're growing one pot. Consider yourself finding some 2x2 space in a closet or somewhere. If you want to drop the cheap Mylar down the sides, fine, do it. Not necessary. I've ran autos in an open room. They grow fine. They'll get you a few ounces, and that's what you're looking to get. You get a little bit of wind. You saved yourself. I bet what you spent on this, you probably saved yourself in a lot of states where dispos are super expensive. You probably saved yourself some money.
And
even if you stop growing after that, even if you threw it all away, you still saved yourself probably money from buying those couple ounces at the dispo, and probably better quality too. And you got to do it yourself. And then airflow, put it in a room with a ceiling fan. Grab yourself a $20 box fan from the big box store. That's it. You just need airflow. And I would not put a lot of airflow. I mean, we're also thinking that it's your first run. You're not going to grow like the big beast dense plants. So probably they're going to be kind of like, there's going to be enough airflow just generally in the room around it to cycle air across the leaves. So it'll be fine. You don't need high velocity airflow. And I also don't want to do that because the biggest thing, especially if you're growing inside without a tent where you can't trap heat, is heat. The leaf surface temperature is the thing that you have to focus on. The room can be 70 degrees, or the room can be like 72, 74 degrees. But if your leaf temperature is 67, that's going to fucking suck. You're going to have some bad times. So it's about getting that leaf surface temperature up. So I would probably keep the light as close as possible to give me the intensity I need to the leaves to get that heat radiating off of it. And then keep the airflow, keep air circulating, but doesn't need to blast and have the plant moving and stuff. You're just blowing away heat away from those leaves as well. And I think that's it. And I probably would just rock it the whole way. And I was tempted. I was thinking about this and I'm like, and this is assuming you don't have to care about smell. Which I would argue, like a lot of people that grew in their closets didn't have to care about smell. There's a lot of people that just don't. So that's the easy ways. I mean, like, of course, if you have to start caring about smell, you have to do some other things. If you have to be more discreet about it because you can't have a big lit up room or anything, okay, that's where you're forced to make choices. I'm going with this is the cheapest that you would have to start with, and then everything after that is your unique circumstances on top. So you need a tent or carbon filter, whatever it is. I think this would like be the bare minimum, and I think it's about 160, 170 bucks. It'll get you a plant growing, and I bet that Organics Alive just by itself is enough. And if you want to go buy a $15 bag of worm castings from Lowe's or something, fucking have at it. It'll be more than enough than you need to top dress. You could probably even buy one of the small bags of builder flour. I think they sell smaller ones for the same cost, and that'll be a really nice addition. And just rock it and see what it gets you. And if you like it, if the bug bites you, then start upgrading those things. And that light is still going to be fine for a while. It's a 150 watt light. That isn't the greatest if you want to cover a big area, but if you're just doing one plant in a 2x2 setting, photos or autos, it's going to do it for you. Yeah. But the autos, I would definitely suggest first, just for the ease of it, because you don't need a tent, and because you can cheap out on the light a little bit because you just keep it closer and run it for 20 hours or 24 if you really want.
Well, yeah. I think you had a good metric when you think about in this. If you keep in mind what you're investing in versus saving at the dispo, I mean, you calculate them on average. You're $50 an eighth at this stage of the game, so you're $400 for an ounce.
Yep.
And if you can get an ounce or two off of one plant, your first time running out, you now have saved yourself quite a bit of time at the dispensary.
I think it just shocks people because it's a little bit of a sticker shock because you have to pay for that upfront, that cost, where if you're buying flour from the dispo, it's an incremental thing and you forget about the last purchase you made and you're not adding it up. No one wants to add up that number. And so they get fooled that like they're not spending all this money, but no, you really are. Yeah. If you want to grow, you're just going to have to pony up that money to start with.
That's the pay it forward component to it. You know what I mean? And to your point, like if you can't like get into the game, and then if you're starting to get interested into it, you can start to add pieces into it. You can start to add more amendments into it. You can add another light. That's why I like when Johnny's early starts, it was got those smaller, the squares that you can just add on. You've got them too, that you can shuffle up and down in different sizes and, buy those where you can build on. And there are a lot of ways to economically get into the game. And then build and build and build. And, so maybe you've got $30 extra next month and you can go and splurge and buy a top dress kit, like you were saying, Howler,
And it can get even cheaper too. It's like, it's also kind of like the DIY stuff is like, what do you have around you? Like, of course, if you have a box fan or a ceiling fan that takes care of circulation, but even light. There's a lot of people that grew under T5 bulbs, and you can mix the colors. So if you have like a 2-bulb fixture, I would recommend like 2 2-foot fixtures two 2-foot fixtures that have 2 bulbs each, and you checkerboard them where it's a 6500K bulb with a 3000K bulb, and do that, and you got yourself a light that's probably going to grow just fine. And again, if it's an auto, you only need 450 ppfd at the top to get 32 DLI, which is kind of where I like to be, 32, 35-ish. I do not push the 40s like some people do. I stay low. It's not shocking with me.
Conservative.
But that's it. It's conservative. And you can, if you had a couple T5 fixtures, just get the bulbs. You probably already have the 60, you probably already have the cool white bulbs. Get yourself some of the warm white ones, alternate them. You just saved yourself. You probably spent half as much on the light then because you reused the things that you had. People overthink it.
There's a couple things I have to address. $400 ounce hurt me to my soul.
It sucks.
I just saw there was a dispensary that had a sale for like $49.99 of these ounces going out the door.
Are you fucking kidding me?
It's not particularly stuff you'd want to smoke, but you know the gray market and black markets around, you can start getting pretty good steep discounts. But if you're paying $400 for an ounce, you'd be silly not to do what Howling and Stoney have suggested.
Especially on the rec market, because you get that huge tax. I think medical, it's a little cheaper. And there's places that still have sales, but it's about $300 on the medical side, and recreational is absolutely pushing like that for.
You're saving yourself a lot of time and money too. And the good thing about doing that is you don't have to have a medical card, so that's always a benefit. But the other thing I wanted to address is that the point of this question too is to get enough of them out there that people in every circumstance can look and go, oh, that's similar to my circumstance. Like Stoney's approach to his dank dungeon or Howling's closet, might appeal to more people. Or the other.
It's intrigued me because like if I can figure out so I absolutely have to be concerned with smell.
Same with me.
I got kids. I don't need them smelling it. I don't need to have them having their friends over. I know we're trying to normalize it, but I'm also gradually trying to normalize those things. And I realize realize culture and what it is.
That's crazy.
So I work with it. And I'm trying to think about the smell thing. And maybe if I still address the smell thing, but you don't have to. Maybe I can, like in my office that I'm in right now, I'm intrigued about running. Like we've seen some YouTube videos where it's some dude with like some CFL bulb in his closet growing something, and it doesn't look the greatest, and that's not going to be very appealing. People are going to be like, why am I growing that thing? But then they see us growing some really beautiful plants, and like that's what they're like that's what I want. But we've also invested a lot into the craft. We invested a lot into our equipment. I'm wondering like what realistically could you do with the recommendations we've had? And I don't see too many people talking about that.
Well, I think to your point before you go on, I think realistically we set our expectations when we give this advice, and you're right, because people growing don't have the same expectations, and we know that plant's going to suffer, right? We know it's not going to be ideal. Also, I have yet to grow a good plant. I don't know what you said. That's
whatever.
Bullshit. But realistically, you and I have an envisioned what kind of auto he or she's going to get in that setup, right? We would be stoked if it was our first, but they might be going, no, man, I want something better. I want to go big. So that could be disheartening.
I am wondering, like, it's intrigued me, like, if I just invested in the same thing I just said, that soil, that nutrient, that light, and I have a room with a ceiling fan, and I'm just wondering, like, what could I reasonably do? I don't know. I'm considering it. I don't know yet.
Of course. Can't you see the lights like going off and the diodes going off over his head, Rev? Like,
yeah.
The Samsung diodes are like
because he was talking himself
new
into
spectrums
it.
are opening.
Well, I have a spare light that will be comparable in price and intensity. I have everything other than like. Actually, I have the Organics Alive sample kit. Never mind. I bought that like a year ago. That's how I knew about it. And I never used
live,
it.
Man. We're going live time right now. He
now,
started it. It's already started. It just.
I have everything.
I think that would be awesome.
I don't know. Maybe it's chaotic right now, so I can't
I
start
was
it
gonna
right
say, but
now. But
your schedule is also fucking
my
pure
schedule this
chaos
summer
coming.
is definitely crappy. So I'm thinking this is after the pop up, but I'm wondering.
Mm.
It's probably a wise idea. We'll continue this series, dude,
Especially when I'm
right?
not running the air conditioning as much and this room gets a little warm. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe. Anyways, that's for a future
it would be a
episode. Maybe
thought.
there'll
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
little series on that.
Teasers. We have plenty of to discuss. I wanted to keep it vague because we can start getting lost in the minutia. But one thing I do want to define as we get further and do these is trying to explain things, like DLI and VPD to people that are as dumb as I look. Because I think people can get lost in acronyms and stuff like that, and it's quite frankly, it's my own fault too. We all could develop a quick, fast talk to approach these subjects, and if we're trying to get someone to do it, they might not know.
And they get lost, and you get lost in something that ultimately
Doesn't matter.
does it. Well, it matters to an extent, but not the extent
Yeah.
that some of us take it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, chasing DLI on your first grow would be, I mean, absolutely possible, and you can absolutely do it and have, you can do research and know. But also, if you're just doing it to grow and watch the plant's life cycle, you're almost taking the wrong lesson from it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Now, before we continue on this series, I'm going to put a little button in that I like your 2 answers. That was amazing. In the theory of thriftiness, though, Stony, you were talking earlier off mic that you have a bunch of stuff that you have to make to care for. You've turned into a nurse essentially, but it's in vain to the frugal nature of when you do have a harvest, right?
Yeah.
I smoke all my flower. It's just I vape it, on my ball vape. It's just that it's the easiest way to consume in my life. But a lot of people enjoy tinctures. A lot of people make edibles. Some people boof it, right? Don't knock people's things, man.
Whatever.
But I think using all of the plant that we can is always the best, frugal option. So how do you go about that, Stony?
Yeah. I smoke quite a bit of it. I think that's the majority of it, and a lot of what I don't smoke kind of just makes its way down to the end of the bag. And I tend to sift that out and either use it as keef to kind of compress and just top onto. But then I also have been started to do a little bit more into the infusion. I ended up with one of those Lebos in like the past. I think I got one about a month or so ago, and I started to toy around and do a bunch of research into different mediums to infuse it into. And so that's kind of been an area that I've been thinking about being more frugal about my larf and some of the stuff that's down towards the bottom that I know still has a lot of really good compounds in it. Still, maybe not necessarily has as much of the THC on it, but there's still a lot of the compounds from the plant that I think are really important and really medicinal. For this batch that I've started working on, is specifically for some pain relief from a mountain bike crash, because stay away from tree roots. And I don't know, the squirrel mafia was out for
those fucking squirrels. I swear to Christ.
I'm pretty sure they were.
bounty.
Yeah. They so she destroyed a collarbone, and so I came across there. I just harvested and dried and cured this butter of the gods from Big Green Guy, one of the strains that I tested, and it is super medicinal. We've been smoking it now for, I don't know, maybe a week or two, a couple weeks, and it's dynamite. And it's probably one of the more medicinal strains. It's really sticky, and so I really wanted to think about making a salve out of it. So I've got it infusing up in there with some coconut oil. Not the MCT. So I did make one infusion for MCT for some edibles that I was playing around with. But I wanted to do something that could be kind of massaged in and rubbed in, because I wanted to play around with some other essential oils. So I went down some rabbit holes to try and figure out something kind of unique. And I wanted a little bit of homage to Big Green Guy, because he's, always does some of the most medicinal stuff that I work with. So I ended up coming across a formulation that includes frankincense in it. So I've got frankincense. It's one of my favorite aromas that I think we pulled out of one of the strains that we were smoking not too long ago from his.
You had some left from when you visited the baby Jesus?
Yeah, and ginger. Ginger oil is going into this one, and then I'm also going to do some lavender into it. So
Ooh.
I think it's like, to go back to your question, like being able to utilize as much of the plant, it might be a little bit harsher to smoke, a little bit more, less desirable, I guess, to smoke from down the bottom and some of the leaf. But to take all that, sift it, take some of the larvae buds, grind those up, and make an infusion with it. Whether it goes into edibles or going into topicals, I think is one of the areas that I'm just going to keep exploring with the plant. So whether it's making delicious things, because flavors have been pretty cool and translatable through this Levo.
That's awesome. I look forward to trying some of your creations.
There'll
Hint,
be
hint.
jars of it. No crashing when you're here, dude. We're
I
not
was
gonna
gonna
let you
say
crash.
a little backstory. I've been talking to Stoney about this trip that we're taking, and him and his wonderful partner are really into mountain biking and stuff. And I live by some very popular trails and in an area that is a ton of people doing it, but I've never been able to afford a bike or been around people who would let me ride theirs, mostly because they paid a fortune for them. But I suckered Stoney into allowing me to try it when I'm out there. And about a week later, he was like, describing this vicious injury and emergency surgery and all these things. And a smart man would be afraid, but I don't
Yeah,
quite lack
good,
those brain cells anymore.
good.
I don't have those brain cells anymore,
It's a
rather.
dangerous sport. We'll make you sign a waiver. Don't
God,
worry.
I know. You're gonna have to be like, see those things, don't go over them.
And it was
She
on
was,
such an easy trail, such an easy
oh,
trail
don't
with a
say that.
huge tree root system that was killer. But
I
that
need to
tree root
adopt
just reached up
Howling's
from the
approach.
soul of hell and just grabbed her wheel, and she went right over the front of it. Broke
Ugh.
collarbone in two places. So it's a common injury, but we'll keep you away from that. We'll keep you on softer trails.
The
So,
the benefit of the activities that I enjoy in the ocean, my friend, is that as long as I don't fall from great heights, the water softens my blow, does
yeah,
not.
and then the sharks will eat you. One of the
Oh
two,
yes.
pool, pond,
We can
whatever.
only hope. Howling, have
Yes.
you any tips to utilizing some of the plant that you don't smoke, or do you do
Yeah.
anything with in it?
So I recently started, same as what Stoney was saying, is making salves. I have quite literally more on hand than I ever need.
Oh, don't worry. I'll be there soon. You can
I
lather me
won't
up.
I won't go into details about how much, but there is more than I'm going to smoke before I think that it has aged a little too much. Like I like aged cannabis, and my sweet spot is about 8 months. But my wife doesn't. She needs that newer, fresher high from it, the zippiness of it. So I found a bunch in my bedroom closet back when I used to store it in there, and I forgot even I was storing it in there. And I was like, holy crap, I got a bunch of Grove bags full here. What am I going to do? So I just recently, a couple weeks ago, I was making my son a non THC salve for his insertion sites for his diabetic devices because I want to try to start healing that skin and not have it scar up. And
Mhm.
I was making it. I'm like, well, that's the same base. It's all like I use beeswax, some other kind of carrier oil. If it's I forgot what I used for this. Oh, I used coconut oil and shea butter, and then there's like Jacuba, or whatever oil, which is supposed to be really
Jojoba?
a good carrier. Yeah,
Yeah.
so like they all have the same base as far as making the salve. It's what you add into it, like the essential oils and stuff. So I made him one, and I'm like, well, shit, I can make myself one. So I started reusing it, and I was making it pretty strong. A lot of people do, I think, 7 grams of flour for a cup of oil. I was doing 14 grams for a cup of oil because that's about the max absorption for a lot of these. And I got stuff to spare, so I'm just going to pack as much as I can in it. Use the same base that I made for him, but the coconut oil I ended up using was infused, and then added some calendula
Calendula.
flower
Hmm.
oil, some comfrey oil, some various lavender, and I think in mine I put some peppermint. All have their different properties, and so I think that's what I'm going to end up doing with a lot of this stuff, because I don't have the Levo, I have the Ardent, but it's the same concept. It does the infusions and decarbs in one thing. So I think that's what I'm going to end up using. I'm not big into making edibles. One, because it sends me to an emergency room. But two, I get really weird about edibles. I worries me that I will leave a pack of gummies somewhere that a kid will find, and they don't know. So until I address that, which I maybe I'll have a lockbox or something that I know, but accidents happen, and I don't want an accident. So I'm a little weird about edibles.
I don't think that's weird. I think that's called like being an adult.
I'm worrying probably a little bit more than I should. I could probably take reasonable precautions, and at 99.9% of the cases, it's going to be fine. I'm overly worrying about it. I don't need that. I know he won't die, but I don't need complications like that. So
or guilt.
a lot of salves, a lot of tinctures. He's not like he's going to sit there and find this tincture bottle with a dropper and start dosing himself. I don't worry about that. So I think that's what I am going to do more with the older stuff, because it may not be great for smoking, but there is, there's still THC in it, but probably some CBN. And so I'll decarb it at that cycle, which is just, I think, a higher temp for a little longer is really the difference. But yeah, mostly it's going to be salves and tinctures and stuff like that. Less of the ingested kind.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I keep mine simple. I do not make salves or anything like that.
Oh, RSO. I need to do RSO. That's what I really should be doing. I'm lazy. That's a little bit more work.
That's intensive.
Yeah. For the longest time, I was like using everything, right? Like everything that I could, even using the already been vaped, the ABV, making stuff with that. Like I was really, really on top of it. And then I just started feeding it all to the worms. And I figure same shit, right? Like you get to a certain point where any way to close the circle is far better than not doing it at all.
So I just won't throw it away.
Yes,
it will not go in a garbage can.
Yeah. That's pretty much my ethos when it comes to it. Now, my gentlemen, it is early on a Saturday. We all have fun things that we want to do. So I'm going to throw it around to Howling. Do you have anything you want to plug? Anything you have to shout?
Nope.
Stoney, I know you do. So I will give you some time before. This is technically a YAG episode, so I will be doing a sermon that you have to sit through before you get to enjoy your freedom.
Good with that. I'm good with that.
And I've prepared and written 375 pages, and I read like real slow. Stoney.
Shout out to the big green guy. The upcoming drop, Butter of the Gods. Man, if I could, I had a short little ride up onto it, but it definitely, it melts me. It is something that is for the evening time. The garlicky components to this herb is incredible. It's something truly unique, and it's savory components, but complete. Every joint in my body just kind of loosens and relaxes. Very calming, and I've had some of the best nights of sleep in quite a while, with it finishing the night off. So it's in an upcoming drop. It's coming soon. I can't remember the exact date. Probably should have written it down. There you go. Thank you. But get your hands on it. Yeah, that's right. That's the big important one. So get your hands on it if you can. It is incredible. Was it Gorilla Butter with the Odinsons?
Yes. Yeah.
So Odinsons on its own is one of the most medicinal, and then you put the Gorilla Butter, which is it just is. It'll knock your socks off. So shout out to him, all the work he's been doing with it, and all the good graces over to him and all as well.
And Wonderful. Go give him a virtual hug too.
Yes.
You ever think about it? Just go give him a virtual hug.
Yeah, he needs 4 of them.
Everybody. I will touch on that in a second, but I want to thank both of you too. Thank you for filling this massive black hole in my heart that was left by the betrayal.
Well, I'm one more person closer to getting you alone away from Johnny.
There you go. Well, and then all of his, you'll have to start deprogramming me from his
the pop-up's coming. So,
unfortunately, the announcement we have to make, I think, is he joined Grateful Nerd. As you can see from his holiday photos, now he's got literally all of Grateful Nerd all over there. Yeah, his influencer fest. We didn't make the cut. Maybe next year.
No.
I guess we got to make a certain amount of Instagram posts per year to get the invite, I was told. And we don't do it. But seriously, thank you, gentlemen. You've helped me finally start accomplishing something I set out to do quite a long time ago. We got the main base picture. We'll get into it more. In honor of Johnny not being here, I'm going to do a sermon so that it's an official YAG episode so he can feel bad. Just kidding. A lot of our friends are going through some really tough times right now. So I think we should all be very aware and super, there for people when they need us to be, because life can get hard for some people, and it's deeply unfair that some slight inconvenience that you're experiencing is nothing compared to the mountains of bullshit that other friends of ours are going through right now. So give a shout out to BGG, and as like you said, give him a virtual hug. The rest of you dudes know who I'm talking about, but I love you all deeply. Don't be a dick, mind your own business, and go with Frog. Now I got to figure out how to turn this shit off without Johnny. Son of a bitch. No, I'm just kidding. I miss you, Johnny.
So badly.
See, and I thought I did it, and I didn't. So now I got to hit another button.